Dreams are often very interesting, I feel. Um, Dreams are sort of something that we really tend to look back on. And dreams are always something that just really hovers around our minds. And it's really, they're really interesting. And sometimes, even the good dreams, I find dreams to be almost uh, terrifying in a way. Dreams, I feel, are sort of the external voice that our minds try to verbalize into what we experience. I feel that a majority of human beings, even including myself, we tend to have a hard time to try and articulate our emotions and our feelings, but somehow we are able to, our minds are able to put them in a way that seems like they're things that you can't understand, but your mind makes it in a way that understands in the most vivid and strangest way ever. Dreams, I often had dreams um as a kid. I often would dream a lot, and in my dreams, very often, were always the most weirdest, the most almost even horrifying in most cases. Um, and I never exactly knew what my dreams were trying to at least tell me. Um, when they had been always sort of uh, all over the place, somehow trying to tell me, but not trying to tell me, and it's strange. It sometimes would preoccupy itself to make itself seem horrifying, and also at the same time try and tell me what it is that is on my mind. And it's really strange. For the sake of conversation of this on this certain topic, I recently had a dream, a very strange dream, almost a week ago, sort of almost a week ago, a week and a half, and it was really strange. It was really weird. So what happened in this dream? Um, I was in this neighborhood that I had not been to in a very long time, and I don't know why I was there or what I was even doing there in the first place. And I was in front of this very almost Victorian esque mansion. It was a very tan mansion, and I had this feeling that I had to go in for whatever reason. So I remember just looking at the scale of this mansion. That was at the same time. I remember specifically, um, this mansion sort of stuck out from the rest of these houses because this was a suburban neighborhood that I used to live in. And so it stuck out with this mansion that was just over the top, compared to these little, 1 story, 2 story suburban houses, run of the mill houses that you'd find in every other neighborhood in the country. Um, and this mansion looked like it came from, I guess, Victorian England. It was strange. but I had this feeling to uh, go in, and so I did. I go in, and I remember how this was all in the late afternoon, and in that late afternoon look when you're inside of your own home, and it's all very uh, yellow, and it's all very somehow, it sort of somehow is both dark yet lit. It's in the between of being lit and dark. The sun's just on its way to set, to be the setting sun, and that was what the inside of the mansion looked like. It was just just this light, these windows that showed this afternoon look, and then there was these furniture, all these furniture pieces that were all just wrapped up in these clear plastic wrappings, as if someone just moved in, and I was a bit confused. And I exactly also remember that the look from the right of me was this dark, very dark hallway, and I remember it kind of scared me from how dark it was. And I look back to the furniture, the wrapped up furniture in the center of this living room that I was standing in, with all these windows, these the blind these windows that's whose where the blinds were just shut, and with this yellow afternoon color that was beaming in through these windows. So I turned back to look into this living room, and then all of a sudden there is this really strange thing that then comes in and starts crawling around the living room floor, and it seems like a person, but it doesn't feel like it would be a person. And it crawls around the floor in a very sporadic fashion, and it crawls like a spider. It only crawls on this in this living room floor, nothing else. And it's crawling all over. And I stood there because I stood there because I did not know what to do, but also I know that dreams sort of they hold you down with these almost metaphysical like binds that hold you down and force you to experience whatever you're supposed to be experiencing. And then, as this thing was crawling around and doing its crawling routine, it got up towards my face, and its face was blurry, completely blurry, as if someone had water painted his face and just smeared it all over. And I could not tell who it was or what it was, but it faced me, and it was completely a blurred face. And then it told me in its voice that his head was hurting. My head hurts, he said. I I don't know if it was a he or she, yeah, but I do remember it sort of also had a sort of a deep voice to it, a weird sort of mix between like a mimic of what a person sounds like. And as he told me his head hurt, he cupped his hand to sort of make a platform of itself, and he raised it to his ear. I think it was to his left ear, and which was my right. It was to my right. His ear was to my right, but it was to its own. It was to his left ear. And as he raised his hand to his left ear, this little ant just then starts to crawl out of his ear, and then it turned its little head towards me, and just started to scream loudly. And it threw me back completely, and for a few moments later I woke up, and for the life of me I do not know what any of that meant, and I don't know what I was supposed to be deciphering from, but I I'm not really sure, but the reality is that most of my dreams play out like this. They're really um they're all very nightmare like. They're never really pleasant or really um just they're always very so vivid and so strange, and even at times almost even intense, and it's never really sort of a it's not a really fun thing to have to wake up from at all. So dreams really, they're they're always so flexible and so very so varied, and depending on the person, or I guess depending on what sort of person you are, you'll get these sort of dreams um, that you'll have. Some people, I guess, are to have very tame dreams and very stable dreams, while others will tend to have nightmares and will tend to have very vivid dreams. And I guess I was lucky enough to be landed with the sort to have very weird dreams. Um, Another dream I do remember is that, and this was way back when I was a child, and it and it's interesting because when I think about it, this dream, it it asks it leaves me asking, uh what how does a dream how do you have a dream that pushes you to do something that you wouldn't normally do in your own conscience, in your own conscious rational self, but a dream somehow convinces you to do a certain thing. And this memory, where, to explain first, I was a really huge fan of the Goosebumps series as a child. I owned almost every book of Goosebumps. I collected all of the Goosebumps books, and they were my absolute favorite. I love those stories. For any other book that I read, I I mostly really enjoyed reading Goosebumps, and I still remember to this day this shelf that I had that was just rows of Goosebumps books, and I really enjoyed um, collecting all of these different sets of Goosebumps books. So there comes a day. So there comes a day where I I think I might have, if I remember really hard, I either went to bed the previous night or I decided to take a nap, and that's when I decided to have this very strange dream that allowed me to what I will get to in a moment. I feel as though I think I might have had it during the afternoon because I remember how sweaty I felt and how nervous I felt from having had it in the middle of the day, which was strange to me. Um, but I remember having this dream where I do not remember the specifics of it. 'Cause this was when I was a child, and but I remember it had something to do with goosebumps, but I do not remember um, what happened exactly in the dream. But the strangest thing is that as a child, whatever happened in the dream, as that dream came to its conclusion, I got up and I had this overwhelming sense of guilt and a sense of shame. And I decided to make this decision where all these books that I collected of Goosebumps, my treasured collection, I grabbed my set of Goosebumps books and I threw them out into the garbage bin that we had. And I don't really I don't know, I still to this day don't know how I felt that I needed to do something like that. I don't know how child me felt that I had to come to that conclusion to throw away something that I really treasured and something that I really loved. Um, but whatever happened in the dream, I feel that maybe because if I can recall the feelings that I had from back then, um, the feelings I remember having from the dream is that there was an end to things and there was an ending, and that there was a sense of letting go. I had to let go of something. Those are two of the things I remember mainly: letting go, and that things were coming to an end. And I guess mainly though that's what convinced me. And mind you, to remind you, this was all under the guise of a Goosebumps story that was happening in my own dream. But it didn't feel like a usual Goosebumps sort of thing. It felt something much more rather serious. Um, but but that happened, and it led me to make a very um, second, a very split second decision to, almost as if I were hypnotized, to get up and grab my entire collection of Goosebumps books and throw them out. And it's just strange that a dream was able to convince me to do that. Really, it's strange. So that brings me to really wonder how a dream sort of can convince someone to do a certain thing. Um, and really, I know there has to be cases, certain cases from any sort of period in time where someone felt that convinced to to do a certain action because a dream made them feel that they should do that thing. And I really find that almost interesting. That memory of when I had to throw away my Goosebumps books because of a dream, that's a memory that still I think of a lot these days. Um, so it's still a shame that I lost all my precious Goosebumps collection because I really did enjoy those books, and they're probably gone forever in a landfill that's been incinerated to bits in the ever raging fires that those landfills would have. All thanks to a dream that I had, but um, but this is not out of the norm for me. It's not at all. I've had, as a child, I've had dreams and nightmares. And if you were to ask me which either of those reigned, um, nightmares were always what filled up my childhood. Nightmares, 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 nightmares really have always been present with me ever since I was a child. When it comes to anyone who really is either landed with, as I mentioned earlier, people who are landed with either dreams that are tame and dreams that are stable, um, and then people who are left with either nightmares or terror or night terrors. I can definitely say that that I was left with nightmares as a child. I don't know why exactly, even though there are certain things I feel that could attest for the nightmares, um, without getting too personal. Um, I know that for my own, I was experiencing a lot of things in my childhood, not to name them, but I'm certain that I was undergoing certain emotions from that time, and I guess it translated into those nightmares. So that could be one reason as to why someone would have nightmares most of the time, if not all of the time. So I would say that probably would be applicable towards myself. But I sort of, if I were to be asked, what would I pick? Either dreams or nightmares. Ironically enough, I would pick nightmares because sometimes they could be really good sources of inspiration for any sort of creative work, whether that be a painting or a film or uh, or a novel or a poet or a poetry, any sort of form of art. I feel somehow it is very beneficial if you were to have nightmares, and maybe even more beneficial where you're just now at the peak of it if you were to have nightmares all the time. Now that's a good deal. If you were to have nightmares all the time, then you're good to go as an artist. But I guess I would pick nightmares. However, I do feel though that even though I've said how I've had nightmares often as a child, but I will not forget also how I've had very few dreams throughout my life that I could still remember, and these dreams, they were they were very sweet, and they were very touching, and they were very genuine, and they were very loving, to say the least. Um, they're dreams that I still don't forget to this day. Um, so sometimes I do long for those sorts of dreams where I realize it's not a nightmare, which I'm so accustomed to, um, and I realize it's something different, and I realize it's a loving, sweet dream that only looks for the best intentions towards myself. And I guess in my mind, it probably my mind is it's a way my mind is trying to mend itself, giving itself self-love, and um, and it's almost like it wants a break from the amount of nightmares that it would be left with. Where dreams come from, none of us really, I don't think any of us could really answer that. It's such a loaded question. Um, where dreams come from. You could say dreams are almost interchangeable from ideas. Um, because both of these things, you would have to be a living thing that can perceive things, digest things, a living thing that's aware of its surroundings. You grab ideas from your experiences and what you feel and what you touch and what you see. And I feel with dreams are sort of, maybe it's the consciousness, the conscience, their duly reports at the end of the day of what they've gathered. When you're going to sleep, that's your shut-off mode. And I guess the mind, as it will still be active, it starts to write up its own observation that it's gathered as you were awake, and it brings you back its report. And that's what you're left with, whatever that is. Maybe it could just be chalked up that dreams are just really something from the mind, and it's nothing more than that, really. However, I'd like to think that dreams, they don't just come from up here. I feel like dreams, maybe they come from somewhere else, and really, I feel dreams. We're all born into this life, and whatever our life is made up of, it's partly really up to us on what we try and decide to do with our lives. But if I mentioned how most people would either end up with tame dreams or nightmares, that would have to lead me to this idea that I feel that could be maybe a way to see of where dreams come from. And I feel that dreams come from this factory. And these dreams, this giant factory where no matter where you are in the world, whether you're in this little tiny space of land in the middle of nowhere, and or even if you're in near the end of the world, or if you're in the bottom or top of the world, this giant factory remains in the center of everything. And I feel that every one of us we all are near this factory, just right in the center of it. And this factory hands out these dreams. It makes these dreams it sends these dreams for each and every one of us that are nearby this factory. And in this factory, it does not go anywhere. It's all in just one spot in the center. And like I said, no matter where you are in the world, this factory will always stay right near in the middle. And all of us really are always in the middle of this factory. And I guess really, this factory that would give these dreams, however this factory uh, operates, I feel as though since I was a child that um, I feel that it had given me nightmares instead. Um, Most people that I met have always never really had nightmares to a degree that I had. Um, Whenever I tell someone my nightmares, they would sort of be a bit bewildered by the sort of things that go on in these nightmares. Um, but indefinitely, I feel for anyone else who has dreams, um, whether or not you have them so often or so rarely, um, if I can speak for myself, ever since I was a child, they were there were nightmares, 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 nightmares. 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 There were nightmares, 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 nightmares. And now it's dark. I certainly feel, though, from the constant nightmares that I would have, um, I feel as though it's sort of an inner voice that I am being given, and it's never really clear um, as to what exactly is this voice trying to tell me. If I had said earlier about certain dreams just trying to tell you something, and and being a sort of verbalization of things that are going through your mind. I wonder if the constant nightmares that I would be given, if they're sort of uh, a physical, metaphysical, uh, a metaphysical display of what I experience, or at least what I have gone through in my life. I have nightmares so often, as I mentioned, that I would find myself really waking up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. And something that I know myself to have is that I have a giant phobia of the dark, a really giant phobia of the dark. I really, really hate the dark. If this room were, if the lights of this room were to shut off immediately, I would go into a panic mode. That is how afraid I am of the dark. And really, it's a horrible thing to be someone who can be afraid of the dark, but also wake up from nightmares and find yourself in another layer of darkness. And that's something that I really wouldn't uh, put that on anyone else, really. And um, I would fight my way out of the darkness, really fight my way to avoid the darkness, and to avoid whatever is within the darkness, because my mind really, it really draws up a lot of images within the dark, and it's never pretty, to say the least. And it's something that I often wish to avoid, but most times it's not. It's something I cannot avoid. But the thing that I've always would have since ever as a child is a nightlight, um, and the nightlight would sort of be my savior in a way. It really would, because the nightlight would let me know that there's there's nothing to be afraid of, and the nightlight really would prove itself to be a sort of safe haven for me, and I would not be in any more danger, and I would not find myself hurt physically or mentally by anything that could hurt me. Now, the the reason why I'm afraid of the dark is almost entirely another story of its own, and not really a great story, to say the least. There is a reason why there is a fear of the dark for me personally. Um, but I would find myself sometimes also um, fighting the dark, because sometimes I would navigate my way through the dark to sort of dance with the dark. Um, and really, when you're creating things, when you're someone who's able to create things and be an artist of some sorts, you sort of have to dance with darkness with a bit. Um, you sort of do have to dance with it a bit in order to sort of find what you're trying to make in its core, or even so, find what you are. But the whole story of my total fear of the dark is really another story of its own, and it's something that still is in my mind most of the time as to why I am sort of afraid of the dark. But another another time for another day, really. But much like the darkness, dreams are really always prevalent. Dreams are always floating and witnessing and hearing and seeing and most of all feeling. And really, we are the sum of our dreams. And I feel whatever you dream of is sort of what you are almost. Um, and it's something that's really um, it's something that's really just is a lot to try and understand. But um, but what I hope is that I always tell people that I know of that I would always, or when I have the chance, I would personally tell them to have sweet dreams, because having nightmares is horrible. You can only have nightmares so often. Having nightmares every night is a horrible, horrible thing, and it can really drain you. There's times where even I found myself bedridden because of a certain nightmare I had that was just too much, and it just really fucking brought me down and just left me um, stuck in bed, just physically, just shot me down. And whenever I have the chance to tell someone before they go, I always tell them to have sweet dreams, because I think having a good dream could be really the best way to have your day started, or even so, the best thing that could have happen to you in a week, really. Because I never really would um, wish anyone the level of nightmares that I would experience. Um, and I know some people who have constantly have nightmares, and it's horrible. But you know, sometimes the environment that you're so used to sort of molds the clay of your brain, and it forms the landscape of which you'll decide to dream. And in my case, I guess it just so happens to be a very a plague-ridden field of nightmares. So, you know, kudos to me, I guess. But uh, it is something. Dreams are very something to always look back on, and to really try and not understand them. I think maybe the thing is to not understand them on their own, but to really try and understand yourself and what they say about you as a person. Now, there's another argument to make. Could we really interpret our dreams too much? Uh, I don't really. There's an easy way to try and probably go through the whole process of dreams, and that's the you know classic saying of just it doesn't matter, bro. I I don't think really sometimes some dreams you just kind of just have to just look at them and go, well, that was something, and really try not to give it too much meaning, because sometimes I feel that the mind just sort of conjumbles all these things and just drops a whole giant ball of bullshit uh, that somehow leaves you to feel as if though you need to interpret something from that. No, I don't. I don't think. I think. I don't think all dreams are meant to be interpretable. But sometimes I do feel that some dreams have something to say, especially if it happens to be involving whether something particular happened in your life, or whether you're feeling a certain thing that you just cannot shake off, a feeling that has resided in you since a while, um, and uh, really, dream. It always leaves me somehow just stuck to for someone like me who is so used to the concept of dreams. Um, I I cannot really exactly say what they are and where they come from. There's never really a clear answer, but I think sometimes that's an okay thing. Sometimes things don't really need to have uh, an explanation. You just sort of go with the flow. And other times you can't really just say go with the flow. Sometimes you just have a dream, and it's sort of hard to shake off for the first day, for an entire day maybe. I've certainly had nightmares where they were much serious than they needed to be, um, and ever so more vivid, but still nonetheless serious. And and sometimes your mind really, truth be told, and I've been told this so many times in the past, but sometimes your mind really can be your worst enemy. Um, and that's sort of a scary sort of idea that not even you can trust your own self, really. But um, but it's an interesting thing nonetheless. Um, but it's something also that I sort of tend to get scared of in some areas. But if we can evade the darkness for just a little bit, I to come back to the ever so lovely aura of those lovely dreams that I've had in the past. To really sum it up to what sort of dreams I would have, it would be a childhood plushie of mine, um, being Stitch. I love Stitch. See, the sad thing is that I can't say I love Stitch without seeming that I'm one of the Disney adults who really chalk up Stitch as just another merchandised item, just another mascot to get excited to purchase, and just see him nothing more than just an item on the shelf to prove that they're a fan of this certain thing. But personally, for me, I always found the character Stitch to be a sort of comfort character for me and to who I am as a person. But that's, again, another thing to talk about some other day. But I've had dreams involving him, my childhood plushie, and I've had dreams of being with friends, certain friends that I've had, even though personally I've never really had a lot of friends to begin with, and certain lovers that I have had in the past, and just very specific scenarios where it almost plays off like a film. Um, a film, a really lovely film that I feel completely enamored in, and completely almost like a brace of arms are just holding me. And those dreams, as I said earlier, um, those are dreams that I don't really forget, even for a long time. Um, it's ironic how sometimes you can remember the few dreams you've had compared to the overwhelming amount of nightmares that you've ever had. It's almost like you find the diamond in the rough, just a whole slew of black oceans, and all you find in the middle, right there, is that ever so gleaming, soft glow of just love and complete joy. And that's really how I felt with those certain dreams. But dreams overall are is a vast subject that one sitting of this just it couldn't suffice really. And sometimes you're better off just never talking about it because you can feels like you almost can go crazy trying to just make sense of these things. But um, but from my takeaway is that my takeaway at least is that I feel that the overwhelming amount of nightmares that I've ever had is it's it's hard to deal with at times. But at the same time, as I've said before, um, when you're able to dance with darkness so much, it's something that you can get used to. And really, um, dancing with darkness sort of is just another one of the many facets of just dealing with certain things in this life. Um, and but there's always a point where you can just, like any other human being, where you can just pull back and say, "Hey, now, a little too much for my liking." Um, but uh, but for me personally, I as much as it can be too much, sometimes I am a little grateful that I do have nightmares because, again, when I dance with darkness for a bit, it can conjure up some great things on paper. Um, but sometimes, again, you have a little too much of darkness overflowing the bottle, and it can be a real problem. So it's best that you watch out for that. But dreams overall, just dreams are so translatable, and the mind again proves itself to be such a vast, such a vast place of things that to this day none of us really can ever truly understand. Our minds are almost like the ocean. The ocean is this vast space that certain areas we just can't access to this day either. There's a certain amount of things that we know about the ocean, but even to this day, we don't know what lurks beneath the ocean. And just like our minds, there's certain things that we just don't know how it works. And I find that to be fascinating. And like I've mentioned of that factory um that I feel that dreams come out of, maybe that factory's somewhere in that ocean too. Who knows? But um but it can both be an interesting, scary, but interesting place. Um and really it's sort of something to behold. And the human mind is just something that's just, even on another conversation, is just, it's not a definitive thing. There's no clear definitive thing of what the human mind is, and neither is our dreams. They form, our human minds form along with dreams. There's never a clear definition of what it could be. So with that in mind, I'd just like to have the chance to say, for anyone who happens to be listening, sweet dreams.